Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Mess. So, Derek, and apparently 2 months have gone by because MAME 288 has been updated to MAME 289. I told you guys I would do a video when MAME 289 was out, talking about all the improvements that came to the emulator in the last 60 days or so. And honestly, in this video there's also going to be some improvements that actually didn't come to MAME, and that is because not every single merge request is actually accepted by the MAME team. So we talked about the fact that 3DO M2 finally emulates at full speed thanks to Tova, and Battle Trist is playable for the first time ever. None of those improvements are going to be in MAME 289 at this point in time. So if you download MAME from the website and try to play 3DO M2 games, you're still going to get slowdown. You're still going to get maybe an unplayable experience, and Battle Trist will not be playable at all. And before I get into what did and didn't come to MAME this month, I will tell you right now, a user on my Discord, Hippo, every single time MAME comes out, builds a custom fork with all the improvements that actually get merged in. So the link to my Discord is in the description below. So if you want to play any of the things that I'm saying didn't make it into MAME, there is that custom build down there that will allow you to do so. And honestly, that's not a dig on the MAME team. Sometimes things just take longer than you or I would like them to, but I will let you know when we're talking about something that does exist or doesn't exist. But as far as MAME emulation is concerned, 289 has some nice improvements, so we're going to be going over each and every one of those in the video. Before I get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. Now starting right off at the top, the MAME Zeus 2 improvements for both Cruise and Exotica as well as the grid have made it into the new version of MAME. And for the longest time, Cruise and Exotica had some really bad graphical glitches that would render the road completely not drawn on the screen. You'd have no idea where you were going, and basically while it would run, it wasn't something that I would consider playable in any way, shape, or form. Now in MAME 289, you're going to be able to play Cruise and Exotica as well as the grid in a very buttoned up kind of situation. It's not going to be 100% perfect, but it's going to be 100% playable, and that's what really does matter when it comes to the emulation. And for stuff like the grid, either people in the preview video I ran had never heard of it before and were stoked, or remember it from back in the day and were equally stoked, because basically this is just Smash TV in 3D from some of the same developers that worked on that game. It is a 3D arena deathmatch shooter that had a bunch of arcade cabinets that were all networked up back in the day, so you could do 4 and even I think 8 player matches depending on the actual cabinet setup. So now these are going to be 2 games you're going to be able to play in MAME 289, and I definitely can't recommend the grid enough. And even though obviously Cruise and Exotica existed on the N64, I would still say the arcade version is definitely better, even if you emulate something like the N64 version of the game and improve its overall internal rendering resolution. The arcade version is just a ton of fun. And the Zeus 2 board was definitely a fun kind of iteration for Midway in and of themselves, because they had the Zeus board that ran both Invasion the Abductors as well as Mortal Kombat 4, but then you move up to the Zeus 2, which had a little bit more power and only got 2 games, so it's one of those things. Not really surprised that this took so long to get buttoned up, because it was just 2 games, but now as of this version of MAME, you're going to be able to play both of them, and that is awesome, because I've actually held out to buy a Cruise and Exotica board because I knew these improvements were probably coming soon, and wiring up arcade racing boards outside of a cabinet can be an absolute pain. So it's one of those things I kind of held off, thinking, you know what, this is definitely going to come soon, and that's exactly what happened. So Zeus 2 emulation improvements are in MAME 289 today, so go ahead and enjoy them. Now unfortunately, none of the improvements, like I said at the beginning of the video, for the 3DO M2 are merged into this version of MAME. So if you go in right now and you try to play, Battle Trist really isn't going to draw many of the graphics once you actually get into the game, and the rest of the titles, the 4 that aren't Battle Trist, are going to run very slowly with a really staccato, kind of hitchy audio going on. So hopefully by the time we get to MAME 290, those improvements will be merged in, because this is definitely important stuff. Because obviously I own all the arcade boards for these games because I love collecting 3DO M2 stuff, but for basically everyone outside of emulation, it's basically impossible to play Battle Trist. I know of about like 5 boards in the world, maybe 6, that exist for this game, and outside of this emulation right here, it's basically impossible to play it unless you own that board. So again, on my Discord server, under the MAME news channel, we have pinned that build so you can play it today if you want. Let's do the first of 2 soundtrack samples, 3DO M2 related, and I'll be right back. So between Tobey Poly's Stars, Heat of 1198, Evil Knight, Total Vice, as well as Battle Trist, there's 5 games that run on 3DO M2 hardware, a console that never existed as a video game console because it was canceled at the last minute, and every single one of them is a ton of fun. So again, if you pop over to my Discord and go to the MAME News and Updates channel and check the pins, Hippo Pippo's build is going to be in there, and trust me, it doesn't do anything other than MAME. It is exactly the same look, the same UI, it just incorporates all of the different merge requests that didn't end up in MAME 289, so that if you do sit down, you do want to play something like 3DO M2 emulation, you're going to be able to do it with that version. So hopefully in 2 months we'll be able to do this in the mainline fork, but I know a lot of people were very excited about this coming to MAME 289, and it just isn't here quite yet, so I figured I'd let you guys know that in the video before you ask later on. Now, stuff that did make it in are the Namco System 23 improvements, Crisis Zone specifically. They do mention that game in the actual bug fixes, and sometimes you end up with code for one game coming in, but maybe not all of them, because the only mention I could find was for Crisis Zone to fix the aiming and to fix the speed. The other Namco System 23 games, I didn't see any mention in the actual main patch notes. That could be that they just didn't put them in there and it has still improved, but basically just assume that Crisis Zone is the one that's improved right now, and the rest of the games that you might see within this section might not actually be there, because every single fix or addition in code can be useful for one game or can be useful for every single game. So if you see something that just mentions a system and a game, more often than not, that means that code addition or bug fix or just improvement to the underlying code is going to benefit just the game mentioned in that heading. So we know Crisis Zone is included in, and I did take a look over at Discord to see a couple other people testing stuff, and they didn't see really any improvements to the other games that are going to be in this section. So if you've been waiting to play Crisis Zone, getting it to near full speed so long as your system can handle it, and getting actual aiming, that's going to be something that does come into MAME 289 this month. And even though Crisis Zone obviously came out on the PlayStation 2 as well, I would say this version is definitely the best version. Not only does it have the really fun Namco System 23 chunky polygons and vibes, but it doesn't have that smoke effect to hide all the flashing that you got in the PlayStation 2 version of the game. So if you have a powerful enough PC to run Crisis Zone, comparing it to PlayStation 2 versus the arcade original, to me it's a no-brainer. The arcade version on MAME is just going to be the de facto best way to play something like Crisis Zone, and it is an amazing game. But stuff like Time Crisis 2 here, that is not mentioned in the overall patch notes for MAME 289, but that has seen improvements as well. So again, if you grab that custom build off my Discord, you'll be playing more improved Time Crisis 2 emulation as well, with some visual bugs fixed up and some of the overall colors balanced closer to what a real arcade board would do, because that usually is the final boss of stuff like arcade emulation, especially in 3D, getting the colors exactly right as they should have appeared back in the day in an arcade cabinet. And that can be difficult because monitors were selected for games and installed in that had their own color profiles, and over time those degrade and even change the color. So trying to say what is quote-unquote right is not an easy thing. Let's go into the next soundtrack sample so you can hear some of the improvements overall to Namco System 23. Then I'll come back, show you guys the next section. We can talk about what did and didn't come into MAME 289. But enjoy.
I knew it. These maniacs have got the military satellite. And they're moving it by train.
We better get going. There's no time to lose.
Look over there.
Let's go! Oh! There! Go, go, go! Action!
Time Crisis 2 is just straight up such a fun game, and again, it did get ported to PlayStation 2, but just like Crisis Zone, I prefer the Namco System 23 version, just because it's the aesthetic I enjoy, and there's also people playing around in code, getting out of the linking working with System 23 as well. Didn't see any mention of that in something like the actual MAME GitHub notes, and I don't believe that's going to be in Hippo Pippo's merge either, because it was still just some experimental stuff. And I will have a separate video maybe next week on all the MAME System 23 improvements that should be coming soon that have been made, because I did a specific video on that. Now moving over to Jurassic Park 3 on the Konami Viper, I showed you guys that this game now runs and is playable, even if obviously it isn't running to what the Konami Viper Arcade PCB standard would be. This again is something that's not going to be in the merge, and this is one that unless you're very curious about Jurassic Park 3 on the Konami Viper, or just love testing some really exotic hardware, that you probably don't even really want to worry about until the emulation actually improves. but all the time things start working a little bit better. You can play the games, but you just can't play them super well, and Jurassic Park 3 definitely is in that category. And I'm hoping by the end of the year we see some more Konami Viper updates, because I absolutely love the hardware. I've got like 6 different games in my arcade closet I've shown on the channel, and I'd really love a lot more people to play them. And in the link on front, they are all medium resolution games as well, which is a pain even if you have a CRT to be able to run them. So just be aware, if you want these, maybe coming soon. And also, there were some Model 1 emulation improvements. I'm just using one of the PC Model 1 emulator footage videos I have right now, because I didn't have time to sit down and actually capture that last little bit for the video, because I have a very busy Friday going on. I have an absolutely stacked weekend as well, with some fun videos and other things to work on. But Virtual Fighter as well as Wing War are going to see improvements, and honestly getting some improvements to Model 1 is a fun time. But it really isn't surprising. You have 3 different versions of Model 1 emulation right now. You have MAME, and you have the 2 other emulators from Sega Model King as well as Wanzai, so it's really something. There's a lot of innovation going on with Model 1, and there's also some innovation going on with Model 2 as well, but that doesn't really have anything to do with the MAME video. But just be aware, there's going to be a lot of fun stuff going on for the Sega Model 1 and Model 2 in the next couple of months. I'll definitely be covering it on the channel. That's your MAME 289 update. Some of the things I talked about ended up merged into the mainline branch. Some of the things like 3DO M2 emulation just were not included yet. So one more time, if you want to play that build a Hippo Pippo made, just pop over to my Discord. The link's in the description below, and I made a fresh link because honestly, Discord links drive me nuts and always end up expiring. But you tell me down below, what's the #1 game that you enjoyed seeing improvements for in MAME this month, and what's the one game that still doesn't emulate well that you would love to play? For me, it's definitely some of the Konami Viper stuff, some of the boards that I don't actually have or have trouble running like Warzade. But I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.